Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines. We find those stories that the mainstream media is not talking about. And we tell y'all what's actually happening in this world, in this community of ours. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Joined today by my dear co-host Luke.
Hello.
Or actually, I might hold on.
You have the wrong one.
There it is.
We go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got to have the correct mic going.
Yeah.
You got your phone plugged in. I don't hear anything coming through it though.
I'm not getting anything through my.
Oh, yeah, it's just usually we have some like background music, so it's not just us ranting about politics into the quiet. But this anyway,
My headphones are finicky.
So, all right.
I've got the gravelly voice going on right now. I'm kind of digging it.
I'm digging it too. It's great. Are you gonna start?
Hold on. Maybe it's because I should hit play.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. That works. There we go. Okay. So
It's been an ominous week.
Yes, it certainly has.
So I feel I play a lot of D&D. I run a lot of D&D. I've got the mood music.
Yeah. Especially today. Kudos to New Deal Grandpa. He delayed the vote for about a day, but if you were watching any of the network news earlier, you noticed a bunch of rich white people celebrating the fact that they're about to kill the poor.
I mean, okay, like, not to put too fine a point on it, but the Onion headline today was amazing because it's so accurate. I believe it is, and this is from the Onion, folks, an obvious satire publication. No questions about it. I need you to understand that, just so we're clear. The Onion article headline, I believe, reads, Paul Ryan celebrates by killing a auto worker on the floor of the House to celebrate class war on the poor, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right.
Or to celebrate to like bring in the killing of the poor, or some junk like that. It's really extreme, but seriously on the nose.
I'd say between like seeing that today and the fact that, like, you know, all the Trump media outlets and like a lot of conservative ones are like, yeah, it's Trump's first big legislative victory, and if that's a legislative victory, I don't want to see what a.
I mean, I came across a wonderful Twitter account called Education for Liberals, mentioning that Obama has increased, during Obama's term, he increased the debt by $10 trillion, which that's like something I've never paid attention to really hard, so I can't really just sit here and refute it. But I know that this tax plan is trickle-down economics, which we've tried to do in the 1980s. We tried to do it in the early 2000s with George W. Bush. They keep on trying to do this, and I remember, at least from the GW days, they enacted tax cuts, and then at the end of the GW days, we were worse. Like, the debt was debt was worse. And the deficit was worse.
You know, here's the thing too, is like this tax bill has about 3/4 disapproval from the American people.
Yeah, it's like 28%. It has like a 28% approval rating. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's that would include a lot of conservative folks. And
I would I would like to remind everyone that District 6's representative has voted on this bill a couple times and said yes every time.
Fred Upton.
Mr. Fred Upton. Mr. Fred Upton has had a nice bout of habitually voting for things people don't like. I looked it up earlier because I just kind of asked myself this question. I looked it up earlier. Fred Upton voted yes on the bill that repealed the internet privacy protections that individuals had, which was a bill that was signed. So, like, calling this the first major legislative victory that the Republicans have is a little crazy because they did that first. You know, they started privatizing the internet first, and then, you know, they repealed net neutrality. So, you know,
well, I think like the difference in that is, you know, even within the metrics of what they can BS and claim is a good thing, invading your privacy and felling, there's no way to spin that.
No, there's no way to spin it. The bill had had a 6% approval rating. Fred Upton voted yes on it.
And with this, they're going back to the old playbook saying like, oh, it's trickle down, it'll help middle class people, blah blah blah. And it's gotten to the point where, like I said, about 3/4 of Americans have wised up to that, and they're like, no, this isn't going to trickle down to us. This isn't going to help the middle class. You know,
especially it's like they sold it. I think they managed to sell it in '84 with Reagan because of the boomers. They managed to sell it again in early 2000 with G.W. Bush because, again, of boomers. Because they're all like, oh, yeah, Reagan was fine. The first Bush was fine. It was fine. We're doing well for ourselves. Why not? Let's just keep doing that. And back when George W. Bush was elected, like, that was one of the first presidential races that I actually even halfway paid attention to as a young politically active person. And I knew that I didn't really want George W. Bush. It just felt wrong. Like, he's talking about cutting stuff for people who have a lot, and I'm sitting down here in my lower middle class income family going, man, it would sure be nice if, you know, some of that came down to my single working mom. But it doesn't sound like it's going to come down to my single working mom.
Well, I mean, the Bush tax cuts at least had the foresight to be like, you know, basically, you know, give I mean, like I said earlier, give the poor their bread, which so, you know, the Bush tax cuts, low income families would get like what, $200-300 a year, and that would be enough to be like, see, they're doing something for us. You know, even like a lot of those, like, you know, kind of low information Rust Belt or, you know, kind of rural conservative voters would be like, oh, well, you know, they are giving us this thing that I did not see under Bill Clinton or, you know, what, so on and so forth. This, I mean, there's no, you know, there's no getting around it. It's not even that they're cutting taxes for everyone. This time they're explicitly raising taxes on people who make less than $70,000 a year.
Yeah, if you if you make less than $75,000 a year, Fred Upton raised your taxes. It might not cut in for a couple years, but he raised your taxes. He's raising your taxes. He's like, if you're struggling to get by, Fred Upton and the GOP, like, and I'm gonna hammer on Fred Upton. I'm really
please do.
I'm really tired of this guy. I actually wondered to myself, like, how far I could probably make it within Kalamazoo's political sphere if I just stood outside his office with a megaphone and just shouted about all of the things that he has done.
Frankly, you'd be in good company. People are doing that just like once or twice a week.
I'm really sick of this guy. I'm really sick of this guy. But no, like, your taxes are going to go up based on the plan that has been laid out and has been studied and has been at least glanced by the CBO. It's the Congressional Budget Office. It's just one of those things where when you take a look at the hard numbers of the bill and, like, go read an actual economist's breakdown of the bill, you hear the same thing. The rich disproportionately, like, benefit from this bill, and taxes on the poor go up.
Oh, and I wanted to mention too, like, so I'm a pretty regular listener of Democracy Now!, and they did a report the other day that struck me, not because it was necessarily giving me new information, but because of the source. There's this fellow named Philip Alston. He's British, and he is the United Nations, the UN special reporter on extreme poverty and human rights. And he recently did like this kind of 2-week fact-finding mission in the U.S., California, Alabama, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, where it's specific focus. But he's also spent some time looking at this tax bill and, basically makes the same kind of warnings and critiques of it that, me and Luke are making on the show. Except this is a guy, the United Nations is calling this out as this
dude's specific job, his specific job is to research inequality and poverty. That's his job. So when someone whose job it is to study how inequality is happening in a country and how bad the poverty is because of it, is coming out and saying these same things, dude's sort of an unquestionable expert on this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really feel like he does. He has a job at the international, essentially the international body of governments, to speak as an expert on these topics when countries want to know what's going wrong. It's freaking ridiculous. But even then, you don't hear about this really from mainstream sources, as far as I'm aware, because I don't listen to mainstream sources.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it is getting airtime there, I feel like it's being underplayed. It's being lowballed. It's being undercut is not as big a deal as
we were talking about this. I think last week, how when the tax bill was actually getting voted on, and some of our favorite independent media critics kind of pointed this out too. Most of the mainstream coverage would devote say if you're doing a 40-minute show, 35 of it was focused on Mueller and the Russia investigation. The other 5 minutes was for everything else, including a little bit of talk about and this tax bill is going to fundamentally restructure our entire economy in the favor of the rich. Again, it's what gets me though, and granted we live in kind of a high information bubble, but from the polling that you see, it seems like most Americans are, despite the media blackout, the general media blackout on things like this tax cut, most people are aware of it, and most people don't like it. They do not.
And I feel like it's one of those things, even though the media is not giving it the coverage that it actually needs and that it actually deserves, this tax bill is being sold as tax reform instead of a transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, which is what it is. Because it's being sold as tax reform, and taxes are something that impacts everybody's lives, I feel like it's one of those things that people kind of try to stay up on by themselves, because it affects them personally. And that's sort of the intro to giving a crap about politics, is whether or not something affects you personally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like you just said, it affects everybody very personally. And it's interesting that so that situation with Bob Corker, where he he's one of his jobs outside of being in Congress is he's is it a real estate developer? And yes, and there was provision put in that gives a tax break to that kind of line of work. And before, Bob Corker wasn't going to vote on it, ostensibly out of for ethical reasons. This is going to really affect a lot of my constituents in a bad way. And then all of a sudden his vote changes. when this gets put in, and he feigned ignorance. He was like, I don't know. I didn't know this was in there. I am outraged. Blah blah blah. You know,
the faux outrage. I can't believe these people snuck this past me.
Oh man, yeah.
Even though I benefit from it greatly.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Ha 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 ha. Oh man.
I can't with it.
Yeah, man. So,
or even then, you know, actually, I can, like, riffing off of that real quick, like, Marco Rubio was sort of being standoffish about the tax bill because of the child tax credit.
That's true.
And they doubled it from like 1,000 to 2,000 or something like that. But I'm sitting here going, that's still a freaking pittance.
Well, it's like when Fred Upton, again, going back to like his vote on the healthcare bill, he demanded an extra provision in there for protecting what was it, like pre-existing or disability conditions, but it was like the basically like equivalent of dropping a nickel in the bucket. Like it was, I think it was less than. What was it for the entire country?
Yeah, it was some measly number that, like, if you actually tried to distribute it out through the year, each person would get like $13.
Yeah,
something like that.
It
was something that's like absolutely completely undershoots what is necessary to be effective in that case. So, like, sure, the child tax credit per kid gets knocked up, it has been doubled, but the thing about that is, like, really, I feel that gives the Republican Party additional, they're restuffing the old welfare queen bag. Mm-hmm. Like, they're restuffing the old welfare queen bag. It's like, oh, you have kids so you can get tax breaks and get put on welfare and get money through welfare to survive instead of working. Like that's really what it feels to me. I don't know if it'll actually be true, but damned be to the seven hells if I am surprised if that happens.
I almost feel though it's more of. Because when Marco Rubio did that, like I brought up the Fred Upton example because this is something that a lot of Republicans will do, where they'll use that in the next election cycle when, the opposition is thwacking them over the head with their bad voting record. They say, well, I pushed for this good thing that actually doesn't really make any difference at all, but I stand for children, or Fred Upton be like, I stand with the disabled because I wanted to give them each like an extra $13. It's like, hey, that's a nice night out at Chili's or something.
Have fun at it. It's like I bought the McDonald's for the day.
Yeah, there you go. See,
yay, go me, yay.
I'm a centrist. I'm a moderate Republican. I'm not like those other monsters. Wink, wink.
I'm a moderate Republican. I only want to destroy public infrastructure a little bit at a time.
I don't want to be so obvious about it like the rest of these folks. Who, God, yeah, you look at like, Ajit Pai and his stupid video.
Oh my goodness! It's like, I really, 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 really have thoughts about Ajit Pai and exactly how many phalluses he can climb to the moon.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this on the way over here. It's like we've gotten to the point where not only is the elite billionaire class screwing us over, but it's gotten to the point they're so brazen about it. They're just gonna overtly make fun of the underclass that they're screwing over. They're gonna bring the light to
like
it. Yeah.
The conservatives love pointing at Venezuela. They love pointing at Venezuela. It's like, look at socialism. Venezuela has socialism. It's failing in Venezuela. Socialism doesn't work. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela is having some of the exact same issues we're having right now. An upper class that doesn't give half a crap about the people who produce for them. Openly, like, it's absolute aristocracy partying and having a good time and just being all like, I'm rich, I have cake, I've got security, I'm fine. Meanwhile, there are literal riots in the city streets. They're pointing to Venezuela like it's a joke, and I'm like, no, that's our future, dude.
Well, I mean, not. And granted, I don't know an incredible amount about Venezuela, but I have kind of tried to get a cursory overview of the issues there. And from what I've seen, like a lot of the issues involving like the food shortages and a lot of stops public service have been because of these kind of inflationary tactics going on in the black market, which again, that's less about if the government is dropping the ball, it's in not dealing with these black markets the way they should, but there's a lot of corruption, which again, like, oh, okay, so you're gonna blame socialism on that? You're gonna blame socialism on corruption?
I don't blame socialism for their failure in government. I blame the corruption in their government for their failure of government. And it's exactly why it's the exact same reason why I think right now our federal government is just completely failing at every single level, because it is innately corrupt.
And if you want to get really specific about it, like the reason Venezuela's having problems is because that corruption and ineptitude is allowing black market capitalism to undercut people's quality of life.
Oh man.
But hey, trickle-down economics, that works, guys. All right, just got to give it a chance. I saw a story like...
I want to go back to calling it horse and sparrow economics.
Yeah, horse and sparrow. Oh, okay.
When they
describe this analogy.
This was the phrase for trickle-down economics before trickle-down economics back in the 1920s when they did it the first time.
Yeah.
You remember the 1920s? They were great.
Yeah.
Right up until the 1930s were great, right up until the Great Depression.
Yeah, they roared for a bit.
Yeah.
And then they whimpered for a while into the 30s. Oh.
So, horse and sparrow economics is a phrase, if you feed the horse enough, eventually the sparrow will get some of the original product. Meaning, you have to feed the horse enough so that the sparrow can get at whatever the horse drops behind it.
So yeah, basically the
horse droppings. Yeah, it's poop. It's a poop.
The rest of us are eating poop.
It's like feed the rich. The rest of us can have their scraps.
Yeah,
it was. I have a love-hate relationship with the FCC. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
It's mostly hate right now. But
there's a lot of hate. Two of those folks are pretty solid up there, and then there's the three white men who.
I mean, like the FCC, not even the people who are at the head of the FCC. I mean, like the FCC as a general organization, but that's a whole different. That's a whole different topic.
Oh yeah. Just bouncing off something you said real quick. So, we've got this horrendous tax bill that they have just decided to push through. We've got the FCC, and by the way, like as of last week, we didn't know which. Well, I mean, we had a pretty good idea how the FCC was going to vote.
I was 100% certain they were going to repeal it. No matter what. Like literally, the attorneys general of multiple states are calling for actual legal investigations into the FCC's decision-making process for this specific ruling because of identity fraud. Straight identity fraud.
That's a big thing. A lot of the comments, most of the comments that were being posted or sent to the FCC that were in support of the repeal of net neutrality were from either bots, fake accounts, or in some cases, dead people. I've seen tweets. There's like, can the FCC explain how my dead grandmother has an opinion on net neutrality.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, but we don't need to actually look into any of these comments. We don't actually need to have public hearings about it. We don't actually. It's. I keep on just feeling that we live on the edge of a fascist society, like the precipice of it.
Well, I mean, if you listen, like, I first heard this term from Chris Hedges, the idea of inverted totalitarianism, where it's kind of like that Brave New World idea that the best kind of prison is the one you don't know that you're in.
Yeah.
So we've been living more or less in a corporate state for years now, and one of the buzz terms that I hear a lot, I've been hearing since Trump got in office, was he's peeling back, he's taking off the mask. It's taking the mask off of this kind of this kind of like, I refer to it as like a soft dystopia, and crystallizing it into something that people can recognize a little bit easier. As well, I was talking to Glenn, I believe is the fellow who's in here helping with computers, and the funny thing about like the whole FCC thing is, a lot of the stuff we can get away with as long as they keep, the famous phrase from Rome, give the people their bread and circuses, and you can basically do whatever you want. And right now, this tax bill is trying to snatch the bread out of people's mouths. And with the FCC, those circuses, if you want streaming circuses on your internet service provider, that's going to be an extra $15.99 a month,
which you have to take out of your bread budget.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oligarchy's really shooting themselves in the foot with this one. It's like you take away poor people's activities, and that's all the much more time they can spend brooding and being angry about the rich and building guillotines. But
I just can't, man.
Let's just end the show. It's 5:30. It's just things are too awful.
Everything is terrible. Yeah. Nothing feels good.
Yeah.
We live in a hell pit.
I'd say more of a hell mouth. Where I know my organ.
No, that place is actually that place is actually nice.
Oh yeah, I mean that's true.
I mean the weather's really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice, decent small town, local college.
Sometimes as a community organizer, that's what it feels like, though. You have like you have your like quirky friends, and like the demon of the week shows up. Maybe it's the tax bill or the net neutrality. And you're like, come on, gang, let's.
But it's far less glorious.
Oh yeah,
far less glorious, far less glamorous.
Yeah. I mean, granted, like the rest of the community of Sunnydale doesn't really give them much credit for killing all those demons and vampires either.
That too.
So yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, by the way, if y'all listeners don't know what we're talking about. Let me see. Usually we gotta do a break, but I'm not sure if the computers are.
The computer should be up.
All right, let me see. Let me see here. What's going on with this? All right. Well, let me. We'll do a quick break and then jump into
the actual meat of the day.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the meat. Yeah, talking about that horrible, awful tax bill that just passed.
It doesn't pass until tomorrow when Paul Ryan rams it down our throat again.
Oh boy. All right, everybody, here's a PSA. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Only source for political revolution. Except iTunes won't load. That's just... Okay. Oh, wait. No, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay.
Here we go.
We'll take a break, and then we'll be back.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of West Germany. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Font Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
Wider FM is supported in part by local Kalamazoo and Greater West Michigan.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So we were just talking about the abominable tax bill that it's a real thing, folks.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
It's okay. We can. There is one thing from all of this that does shed light on the horizon. A small ray of hope.
We do like to be glass half full because that's a very important perspective.
Democrats have the steam behind them.
Well, that's true.
They have the steam behind them 100%.
And if they are savvy enough, and here's the deal. So, my feeling is like this next election, especially this midterms in 2018, you're gonna have a lot more fresh, savvy, anti-establishment Democrats running. A lot, and we've already seen that they can pick up and win their primaries and gain momentum in races where they're really needed. And those are the type of people who are going to be sticking these representatives with their votes on the tax plan and their votes on the health care bill and these bread and butter issues that you can actually get some broad, transpartisan consensus around. And when I say transpartisan, I don't mean the actual elected officials. I mean, average people with
the actual
views.
Electorate.
Yes,
the actual electorate, the real people.
Yeah, real people, not fake people, not Russian bots, not Bernie Bros, like actual the people. And because I would say establishment Democrats, they might make some lip service about the tax bill, the healthcare bill, and all that. But their messaging is mostly like just a refutation of Trumpism. Like, how can you stand having oligarchs who are so rude in the White House?
That is like one of the criticisms that Kyle Kalinske recently leveled at the Democratic Party as a whole is like there are 100% things that you can resist Trump on. There are things 100% where if you straight up stick to the policy and stick to it, people will support you and actually vote you in over the garbage that is the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. Except establishment Democrats feel like it's enough to be all like, you're so offensive. How could you say that way? I'm the vapors. The vapors.
The vapors.
Like, tone policing has never won anyone on a side anywhere. Policing someone's tone only makes you look like a dick.
And, it's funny how back in, I think it was like 2015, I wrote like this, it was actually just a Facebook post, but it was around the time, like, I think, like, PC culture kind of it hit the cresting wave. And, what I differentiate that from now, I feel like, in the intervening years since like 2014, 2015, there's been kind of a more mature understanding and development of what, not even necessarily political correctness on the left, but, kind of replace that with more intersectionality. And it's not so much about, you don't see as much kind of aggression and, what's the term I'm looking? Not necessarily witch hunting, but it's become more of a call in versus a call out culture. It's less about like, oh, you said the wrong thing, F you, and more like, hey, you said the wrong thing, and then you reciprocate, respond, saying, oh, I'm sorry, I will change my behavior. But I'm kind of sorry, rambling. But a couple years ago, like that kind of tone policing culture, I said like this is going to facilitate a backlash from people, who are going to get defensive and feel like their cultural norms are under attack, or who, because I kind of used it as an example, a lot of our vocabulary around gender has changed substantially in just the last couple of years, at a pace and a rate that I've never seen before in my lifetime. And,
thanks, Internet.
And I've tried to keep pace with the best I can, and I've made mistakes, but I've also been dogpiled for making honest mistakes. And you think about like the people who aren't as like receptive or as quick to kind of reevaluating their cultural norms, and they're gonna, it's gonna backlash, it's gonna backfire. And I never expected it to be something like Donald Trump becoming president, but something like that was coming to a head.
I mean, yeah, we still have Nazis.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when like you, because I get a little concerned about how some people on like the progressive left talk about identity politics, like it's not necessarily important or something that doesn't matter. It does. And what you need is to have a class consciousness that integrates a understanding of income inequality and critique of capitalism with a multicultural understanding of different ethnicities, different races, different gender preferences or fluidity.
And you can't, and one of those, and with that understanding, you can't break them all down into little boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't sort them all out into little boxes. You have to. It's almost like the best way a democracy works is if you address the ideas in the room instead of the people who espouse them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What? Nah, that's crazy talk, Luke.
What? That's only basic reason and logic. What?
Oh,
a reasonable society won't attack an idea based on what? Get out of here.
Get off the trolley. Man, that's the
Get off the cart.
Yes.
Off the cart with you.
Yep. Oh dear. So
but speaking of, like, I actually rolling back to my Democrats have the steam behind them. The first article that we were going to address today is the corporate preparation for the fight against the fight for 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I was reading the article, and I'm sitting here going, man, this really is class warfare. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because, the idea of a living wage, of a $15 minimum wage, is really popular. Like, even Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are like, well, we support it, and scaling it up to that over a number of years.
I think by like 2024. They said. Yeah,
2024. Pretty
astonishing.
So when you even have Pelosi and Schumer going, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Mm-hmm. It's got merit. I think we could reach that a little faster than that, especially since we'll probably be looking at higher inflation and whatnot. Mm-hmm. $15 is not going to be a livable minimum wage in 2024. I'm sorry, it's just not.
No,
it's just like how $9.25 is not going to be a livable wage in Michigan because it wasn't a livable wage in Michigan 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, 15 is like a basic ask, but like if the minimum wage had actually tracked with inflation, I think it would be around
24. We'd be around $24.
$24 an hour.
$24
minimum.
An hour. Yep,
minimum.
If we scaled it with productivity, it would be even higher.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, what we're talking about is, so they're already, and keep in mind, like, we've talked a little bit on the show about kind of the history of, corporate counter-revolution, especially since the 70s, the kind of, the Powell Memo, the advent of neoliberal economics, and this is really important news because, like, a lot of people, especially kind of the core audience of the show, you'll hear a lot about, like, the progressive insurgency, but, it's also important to know, like, the right wing isn't just sitting around, playing with their thumbs, waiting for us to take over. Yeah, it's just,
the people who are in power typically don't want to lose that power.
No.
So it's almost like they're preparing to make sure they retain the power that they have, which, I'm sorry, y'all old suckers, it's time to get off the chair.
Mm-hmm. So let me read a little bit. This is an article from The Intercept, and the headline is, "Fearing 2018 Democratic Wave, Right-Wing Lobbyists Are Mobilizing Against a $15 Minimum Wage Push." And they talk about Rick Berman, a corporate lobbyist who specializes in orchestrating relentless public relations campaigns on behalf of industry groups, is busy mobilizing business groups to go on offense with the aim of killing minimum wage hikes even before public support has been marshaled for a push. Berman recently traveled to Dallas to pitch a $4.6 million campaign to defeat labor reforms that may be championed by a resurgent Democratic Party. And the memo does go on to note the tough political terrain for this fight. And it is funny, the memo says, the public is not generally opposed to raising the tipped minimum wage or pushing the federal minimum wage to $15. Yeah, we're not, the public is not opposed to, why aren't they opposed to staying poor? I don't understand. Sorry, I'm getting my double negatives messed up. Basically, the memo is saying, like, they're not opposed.
What he's saying is,
we want them to be opposed to making more money.
Yeah, is it the phrase the public is not generally opposed to raising the tip minimum wage or pushing the federal minimum wage to $15?
Yeah.
Like the what he's trying to say is that there's probably ground that conservatives can give to at least the tip minimum wage. Mm-hmm. People are in favor of pushing wages up. Is really what it is. What he's saying here. The political doublespeak is ridiculous. It's one of those things where that's a part of the memo I agree with. I would abolish the tipped minimum wage entirely and just make it minimum wage. My favorite part of the article is the offense message that identifies the true victims of ill-conceived wage mandates.
Oh my goodness. Who are these victims, Luke?
The people who pay poverty wages to their employees.
Those poor people.
I know those poor Waltons, man.
Because corporations are people, so it's,
the negative impact on youth unemployment and the consequent destruction of entry-level jobs. Entry-level jobs aren't a thing anymore.
Yeah,
I need 4 years experience and a college degree for an entry-level job at anywhere that is considered white-collar work.
And even especially in larger cities, like actual fast food joints, and this is a real thing, will they will give preference to employees with a bachelor's degree or a master's because there's such a glut of college graduates on the market that even freaking McDonald's can be a little choosy about who they hire on.
Yeah. The communications budget in the pitch has line items for media outreach, including opinion columns and letters to the editor, along with things like items that can be displayed on tabletop coasters, tray liners, coffee sleeves, etc. in the food industry, i.e. one of the industries that this would actually impact the most in multiple ways. Because there is a case when people are concerned about businesses going out of business, like businesses going out of business because of the higher wages and just making the business non-solvent because the business can't afford to pay its employees. Mm-hmm. And this is also a part of that memo and the campaign is creating the victims of 15 or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like the businesses that went out of business because the minimum wage raised to $15 an hour, the people whose lives have negatively been affected by it. Here's something like this isn't a hugely radical idea. But if you can't afford to pay your workers enough to live, then you can't afford to pay your workers.
Yeah, no, seriously. And this is why I talk a lot about worker cooperatives, which are far more equitable in the way that they manage who makes money and how much. Because even then, this is a little bit apart from 15, but if your workplace is democratic, then the workers have an actual say in how the income distribution should go. And maybe management does make a little bit more than the rank and file workers, but it's going to be a ratio of 1 to 2, not 1 to 200.
Yeah, a ratio closer to 8 to 1 instead of 365 to 1.
Oh yeah. And I want to mention too, this, what you're describing. This is tactic as old as day. The most recent and overt example I can think of is the astroturfing that went into the Tea Party movement.
Yep.
Which essentially there were conservative anti-establishment people who genuinely joined that movement, but make no mistake, that was started in a boardroom by a think tank, and those so-called quote-unquote grassroots organizers were people who were paid by the corporations to throw this idea out there and make it stick with people who were not part of that, quote-unquote club, but who they thought we could make these ideas stick. As a matter, this article,
I'm scrolling through it like while we're talking about it, and man, I'm just like, this guy's a scumbag. This guy is an absolute scumbag. He's against organized labor, and operates several websites and groups. The article lists is the Center for Union Facts, which it's the classic political doublespeak.
Mm-hmm.
Name it something, it does the opposite of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Center for Union Facts, which means it's designed to mock union leaders and discourage American. It's meant like its goal is to mock union leaders, mock the power of labor, mock the efforts of organization by the proletariat to actually get their equitable cut.
Yep.
And to slander them.
Oh yeah.
It's a slander site.
and like like you were saying, like this is like de jour strategy for a lot these right wing think tanks. I'll quote the article directly. Berman is well known for setting up groups that appear as authentic academic policy shops and grassroots organizations that are actually fronts for his business clients. And I'll note importantly, the whole academic policy thing. I highly recommend Dark Money by Jane Meyer if y'all folks haven't read it. But it goes in incredible detail about how kind of neoliberal top-down economics infiltrated academia, and so Berman is part and parcel of the movement of gross little toads that has been infecting our political sphere with these toxic ideas. And through the 90s, Berman was paid by Philip Morris to downplay the risks of secondhand smoke through a group called Guest Choice Network. In more recent years, he's raised funds from the alcohol, meat, soda, and processed food industry while maintaining organizations designed to criticize public interest groups calling for greater regulation of consumer goods.
Now, there's something else in this article that I kind of want to point out as just a general criticism of the right as far as it goes. Quote, the anti-minimum wage strategy for 2018 suggests that Berman hopes to again harness a more visceral approach. Quote, today we need fewer statistics and more graphic stories that show a growing societal crisis that needs to be avoided by rejecting wage policies with unintended consequence. End quote. Guys, this is... the right loves Ben Shapiro especially. Ben Shapiro loves to say these things like, facts don't care about your feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. Like, facts are facts. They don't care about what you feel. They don't care about the reality you create for yourself. Facts are objective. Facts define hard realities about our world, about our societies, and about how our systems work. But the conservative strategy for fighting against the fight for 15 to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, the conservative strategy here is feelings, not facts. It's feelings, not facts. And it just infuriates me. It infuriates me because, and Ben Shapiro is absolutely 100% guilty of this as well, is he cherry picks his facts and then ignores anything that might even suggest that his facts are wrong, whether they be facts that directly contradict the facts he's presented, or facts that, given presented in context alongside the facts he has also presented, that paint a larger picture. He discounts those as well. Like, so no, absolutely, you're using facts to back up your feelings, but you're still talking about feelings because you don't want to be challenged. This is like even not like it's even going past that. It's look at this poor business owner who had to go out of business because he couldn't afford to pay his 20 workers $15 an hour. Like, well, it sounds like he couldn't afford to pay 3 people $15 an hour, let alone 20.
Yeah.
So he's making money off of the exploitation of labor, which is ethically wrong.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And let's like make this a misnomer. Or what is it? Sorry, I think it's a big misnomer to talk about it in these ways, because especially this apprehension that like, oh, these companies will go out of business if they pay their workers this much. Well, if every worker in your town is now making a living wage and they have an extra bit of spending money, well, isn't that? I believe that would facilitate more business in the long run. So yeah, maybe in the short run, it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system. Like, oh, I'm going to have to pay my workers this much more.
It's like, yeah, the initial shock is always hours get cut, people get dropped off payroll because payroll can't afford it. Like that's the initial shock, and it's something that happens when wages lag behind and the market gets used to the fact that it underpays for labor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Having wages catch up to the market is not a bad thing. The initial lurch might be enough to close some businesses. Some people are going to lose their jobs, but it means that more people inevitably make more money, which means that they consume more, which increases demand, which produces jobs, making things that, whoa, it's weird how it's weird how when you put money into the hands of people who will spend almost all of it, how that creates a positive feedback loop.
Velocity of money, I believe.
Yeah, I believe they were talking about it in 2015 when CNBC or one of the market channels had the guy who was like the inspiration of the Wolf of Wall Street or something like that, on to talk about it and to be all like, hey, what do you think about the crazy Bernie Sanders, this guy over here on the left talking about living wages? What do you think about this crazy plan to raise everybody's wages to a living wage? And the dude goes, no, I think it makes total and perfect sense, and I think it'll be good for the market. It's like,
yeah. And they're like, what?
Wait, what? That's not what you were supposed to say.
No, not at all. Oh, yep, but so yeah, look out for it. It's I think it's harder to make this kind of case now, or even like a lot of, because I feel like a lot of poor conservative people, there's this quote from Futurama that it perfectly encapsulates the way a lot of Americans think. This is kind of the way my dad thought of it growing up. So Fry says like, woo, because they do something really nice for the rich, and then Leela's like, Fry, why are you cheering? You're not rich. And he's like, yeah, but maybe someday I will be, and when I am, people like me better watch their step. Yeah,
it is one of those things. I think it's more a inability to look forward and plan ahead and look to the future. Mm-hmm. It's a lack of future sight and future planning, which is hard for a lot of people to do. I can't actually blame or get angry. I shouldn't get angry at people for failing to do it more often, because it's even harder to do when you're busy trying to figure out how you're going to survive the next month.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can't blame people. So when people think, oh, I get a short-term benefit, I need that short-term benefit. Doesn't matter if it comes at a long cost detriment to myself. If I can get it now, it's sort of that instant gratification that many criticize. Many people on the right criticize the left. It's like, oh, you want everything now. And for one, I don't see why we can't. Like, we could just all collectively agree to make this all better. And
maybe
we can
have just
it now.
a slightly smaller military. It could pay for pretty much all of these things that we talk about on the show.
We could reduce our number of global bases by half. Do we need 900 guys? We have a really big navy. We really only need like 450.
Whoa,
right?
now, Luke. That's let's leave it. Maybe go down to 850 in like 4 years.
How about 450 over the next decade?
All right. Well, we'll see. That might be kind of a hard sell for Raytheon, but
well, I'm not taking their money, so I don't care.
That's true. All right. So let's take a little break. Come back and hop in. We've got some more stuff to rant and rave about here on the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Keep your dial locked.
Wider is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
Wider FM is supported in part by local Kalamazoo and Greater West Michigan businesses like yours.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, do we want to take kind of a short sidestep into some good news? Well, would you like to do that, Luke?
Is it recent good news?
It's fairly recent good news, yeah. So I wanted to give you all a little bit of an update on some local politics. I was at the recent city commission meeting on Monday, and we talked about several important topics. One of which was so for those of you who don't know, we've had him on a show. He just did kind of this insurgent anti-establishment run for mayor. Chris Wamoff. He runs this program down on the south side called Edison Ducks in a Row. And what it's all about is basically trying to introduce underprivileged youth in the Edison neighborhood where I grew up, by the way, to barnyard animals like ducks and geese and chickens, and also about agriculture, how to grow stuff. And he's been dealing with a zoning battle with the city for years now, and is basically trying to figure out a way to actually get his program going without a bunch of small government interference, I guess. Also, it was really more alarming. Several weeks back, he actually had his animals taken by local animal control, and he did end up getting all the animals back. But it was a big panic, especially he's very well connected in the local organizing community. We're very concerned about what was going to happen with the animals. So we, him and several of us went to the city commission meeting to kind of speak out about that. And I'd say the city commission was pretty receptive, actually. All of them spoke towards trying to kind of clear up what was going on with the situation. and lend their support around it, which is good. A lot of times when these meetings can be a little bit more contentious or frankly a bummer. But it went fairly well, and also I brought up municipal broadband because, of course, as we were talking about earlier on the program,
net neutrality is dead. Long live net neutrality.
Yes, exactly. And while I didn't show up with a full platform or anything like that, I just mentioned the fact that and I think you can speak to this too, Luke. Growing up in nearby area, how much of an advantage was it as growing up low income to have access to the internet as far as it came to education?
It is one of those things where I've actually had internet pretty much my entire life. I've had access to some form of personal computer my whole childhood. Growing up, 100%, I've always had a computer in the house. I've always had access to the internet. It is 100% one of the reasons why I still learn things today. It is 100% one of the reasons why I managed to get an A on an all-nighter back in middle school. On a paper I wrote back in middle school. It's 100% it's what I learned to do research on because I hated going to the library to do research. I went to the library to get books to read for fun, not to do research. It's indispensable to education. The internet, as it is today, is 100%, in my opinion, indispensable to education. It is inextricable from education. It is the thing that lets someone drop out of school but still stay tapped in. Still, they can find math lessons on the internet for free. You can find quantum physics lessons on the internet for free. You can find videos to teach yourself how to play a musical instrument for free. You can learn to do anything on the internet. You can learn to code. You can learn to build a robot. You can learn to write a law. You can learn about history. There is literally nothing you can't learn on the internet, which is one of the reasons why net neutrality and its repeal from the FCC is one of the things that has me so riled up, because I was sort of spitballing this a while ago, but to anyone who thinks that the repeal of net neutrality is protecting the internet and isn't seeing it like the corporate takeover and burning of knowledge.
Well, again, it's apparently it's okay to be tread on as long as the government's
at least it's not the government.
Yeah, or I really like that one where there's
when discussing government party power, don't tread on me. When discussing corporate power, please tread on me.
Oh yeah, put that corporate boot right on my face.
But it's one of those things where, if you consider the burning of the library at Alexandria a historical tragedy because of the amount of knowledge that was lost, I personally rate it up. The repeal of net neutrality, I rate it up there. I 100% rate it up there.
People think when me and Luke kind of doomsay to this extent, that we're being hysterical or something. No, this is the modern equivalent. It's
the absolute modern equivalent, because literally there is no equivalent to the knowledge that we have managed to obtain and store within servers and access through the internet. There is no historical precedent. The library at Alexandria is literally the closest I can come to within any period of history when we're talking about collections of knowledge.
And it's, I mean, when you're talking about like, I heard somebody else, this is, it's a book burning. What this is, it's, because there's three aspects to it that really lend itself to that kind of comparison. And one is that they'll be able to suppress information that they don't want you to see. And when I say they, I mean corporations like Comcast and AT&T and Verizon. They will be able to suppress independent media, which we've talked about on the show quite a bit, and there's already been corporations like Google and Facebook doing that already. And,
thanks, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, thanks, Mark Zuckerberg. Well, they admitted to open court. It's like, yeah, we suppressed, or no, I can't remember if this might have been Twitter or Facebook, but one of them admitted,
Twitter suppressed the DNC emails.
Right.
They openly suppressed about 50% of the tweets with that hashtag.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's one of those. So there's the suppression of knowledge, the absolute destruction of knowledge,
and let's be clear. Like, probably the most distressing aspect of this, and what I kind of said when I was in front of the board was, they will. One of the most concrete things they'll be able to do with this net neutrality repeal is make internet access more expensive, which is basically like, if you put some gatekeepers outside the Library of Alexandria and said, like, basically, this amount of coins and you can get in.
Well, that was the case.
That was the case.
That was the case.
Yeah.
But like going on spitballing, like as I was spitballing it, like literally, we haven't destroyed the internet yet. It's going to be almost impossible to do so, in my opinion. But we have returned free and open knowledge, free and open information back to the dragon tyrants of knowledge. Except now they're not the librarians at the library at Alexandria. It's the corporations who own the ISPs. I was really proud of myself for coming up with dragon tyrants of knowledge.
Yeah.
We were drinking and talking about role-playing games.
I did want to say, like, there's some good news in the sense that I threw municipal broadband.
You threw the spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah, and 3 commissioners responded. Shannon Sykes, who's usually on the right side of history when it comes to all this stuff. She's very interested, wanted more information. Eric Cunningham, apparently he said he didn't know much about net neutrality. He said, please send me all the information. I wanted to play this short clip just so y'all can hear from the horse's mouth. This is Erin Knott. She's the vice mayor.
I was disappointed that I was unable to attend the event at Sealy. I had a work commitment that had me out of town.
All right.
But I promise
after
you,
this.
continue to throw opportunities our way that I will be, if not at the next one, at one very soon. So thank you for...
There'll be another dedication, too.
All right. I know that you're going to make us...
I'll let you know.
All right. Thank you. I know that you're going to make us aware. Commissioner Sykes had mentioned she hopes Congress is going to do the right thing. I don't share that optimism as it relates to the, FCC, net neutrality, or the egregious
I'm too good at
tax
picking
bill.
music.
I'm not holding my breath in either manner. Been working on both policy initiatives and received some very interesting information about municipal broadband in the last couple of days that I can disseminate to my colleagues as just at least something to be thinking about. Local municipalities that are considering this for 2 reasons. One, just being progressive and proactive, but also 2, responding to the potential of net neutrality changing. I'd also like to mention, Nora, your comments.
All right, so yeah, that's just to know, like, so you do have city officials who are speaking about this and they're talking about it in the right way. Now, obviously, an actual local galvanization around municipal broadband is going to take a lot more work than just showing up at a city commission meeting and be like, yo, what y'all think? What y'all think about this?
Yep. But on that note, there are municipalities who have already implemented this, who have gotten ahead of the game especially in Detroit, where ISPs have been, where the internet infrastructure is just garbage. Like it's absolute garbage. 100%. The communities have been building their own infrastructure in order to get internet to people's houses. Like that's 100% like what we need.
Oh yeah, and like
we need like
well,
without like if you don't treat the internet as a public utility, you are continuing to gate off. You're essentially gating off progress for everyday people. 100%.
That's right. Yeah. And, we talk about, like, some of the problems with graduation rates in our low-income and poor black communities. This is something that comes up when we talk about, like, the promise. There hasn't, oh, great, we have this free college program here in Kalamazoo, but there haven't been enough resources put into actually, like, college preparation in, like, the low-income neighborhoods that need it. Now, if we had municipal broadband, where we would have access to cheap, fast, affordable internet to these poor neighborhoods, that could be a definite tool to help, bolster, those kind of, and, not just graduation rates, but also just have a more well-informed and connected community. And, like we've seen places like Chattanooga, Tennessee, they voted for municipal broadband back in 2010, and they currently have like one of the fastest, cheapest, and most efficient networks in the country.
Anybody who says government ruins anything they do is wrong. It's a straight falsehood. It's 100% a straight falsehood. People who say government can't do anything, they are wrong, because the government is made up of people. And saying that the government can't do anything is really just saying that people can't do anything, which is just wrong.
Yep, and I also wanted to mention, kind of just rounding out the local news, so they also announced the stakeholder board for the Kalamazoo Foundation for Excellence.
Ooh,
and
this will be fun.
They didn't pick me, Luke. Why not? I wonder why.
I wonder why. Is it because you're like a radical populist watchdog?
Maybe, yeah, something like that. Like, I even mentioned at the meeting, it's just like, because I know some of these picks, some of them I don't know, but like one of the things I mentioned is just like, in your decision, because the final vote on whether or not this is going to be the slate, that's going to be on January 16th, I believe. And my whole thing was just like, make sure because it looks like a pretty decent list actually, but just really it sounds like trickle down economics. Actually, when we had Jack Urban, city commissioner, on the show, one of the examples he mentioned was like Costco couldn't actually build inside of the city because the tax rates in Ashtamo were cheaper. And one of my big concerns about that is when you tie job growth and creation to making your city more attractive to outside entities because of a tax break. That's always fragile. That's tentative. That's part of a race to the bottom. Because, okay, maybe some outside corporation creates a bunch of jobs in Kalamazoo because we've got like this really great tax deal when it comes to property tax.
I mean, it's already happening. It's already happening with Amazon's. It's already happening. It's already happening with Amazon's second headquarters. They're all like, "Well, we'll open it in North America somewhere." And now you have cities bending over themselves, backwards to suck Jeff Bezos's phallus.
They were
to just be all like, "Oh please,
we'll give you
give us your HQ.
You won't have to pay any taxes."
We'll zone a special part of our area for just you. You can make a whole Amazon town,
and it's really
and the workers
just make it a company town. Just do it.
We'll make it a company town. All those workers, they'll pay you. They'll pay you to be here.
The most ironic thing about that, in the more recent context, is like you've suddenly in the intervening months since like every every town in America was like grasping at Amazon's pocket or pants, like please sir,
Please,
build
can I
your
have some more?
warehouse here.
Please.
There's been all these investigative reports that talk about the actual working conditions in Amazon warehouses and Amazon drivers, and it's some Upton Sinclair crap up in there.
Yeah, the reports are all like, Amazon expects you to work like a robot, even though you're not a robot.
Yeah. Like in the UK, they have contractors who are expected to basically do like 15 hours worth of work in about 8 to 12, and are given such tight schedules that like some Amazon drivers have had like a bottle that they pee into while they're driving so that they don't have to waste any time going to the bathroom. And there's been there have actually been reports of similar Amazon warehouses, kind of like the ones all these cities are trying to get built in their cities. Instead of investing in air conditioning or central air, they would have ambulances parked outside of the warehouse during the summer, so that when people would pass out due to heat exhaustion, it was actually cheaper to have an ambulance parked out than to actually pay for air conditioning.
In other words, Jeff Bezos is a not a very good person.
The horrible catch.
I have some very strong words for Jeff Bezos.
We don't have a radical bookstore in Kalamazoo, so sometimes I order radical books on Amazon.
Look, I'm about to use Amazon to buy my Christmas gifts, so I use Amazon all the time. Online ordering is great. I don't have to leave my house.
Yeah, it's funny. Like
at the same time, I can still sit here and go, Jeff Bezos, your company is horrible.
Yeah, I was holding like this book about the exploitation of the American worker, and it's like, you know what? I bet at some point an exploited American worker
I guarantee
was putting this into a box.
I guarantee you it did.
Yep.
I guarantee you it did. Like it's one of those, but that race to the bottom that we were talking about, like that's also like a symptom of poor labor organization on behalf of the American worker. Mm-hmm. It's a symptom of the attack on unions and organized labor, because when Toys R Us tried to pull that crap in Europe, they opened up a Toys R Us and in Germany, I believe it was, and Toys R Us and the Germans were all like, okay, you have to do this. Here are a list of requirements that you must do if you want to operate here. And Toys R Us was like, we're not going to do that. The workers shut that store down so hard and so fast. Yep. Toys R Us got whiplash and went, okay, we'll do that. We'll do those things. We'll do it. We'll do it. Anti-labor organization has been so effective in the U.S. that the labor market has tricked itself into thinking that we're not worth much.
Yep, that's exactly it. Ding, ding, ding. Man, we've become so acclimated to poor working conditions that, somebody brought this up, like the way shift scheduling that millennials have to deal with.
I hate it. I finally have my first 40-hour a week job that I don't have to deal with shift scheduling and flexible schedules and all that. I actually have a stable schedule. I'm actually experiencing some existential crises because I'm like, I have all this time where I can actually organize and get my life together. What am I doing with myself?
Oh, I stopped myself at work thinking and I just had my hours reduced in December. This is holiday season, by the way, from 37 to 31. And I've been like, okay, so I need to find a new job. I've been a dishwasher since I got back from Standing Rock, because when you spend a year doing crazy stuff, sometimes you just want to do some normie stuff. So anyway, I make about $9 an hour, and on the one hand, I'm like, I need to find a better job, especially after the hours got cut, and ostensibly because it's in the slow season, but personally, I think, you keep those hours consistent throughout the year, and if you're not making enough profit to cover it and help your employees out, that's a problem. Anyway, so I'm kind of stuck in this catch-22 though, because I have consistent hours. Monday through Friday, 8 to 2 or 8 to 3. And there's a lot to be said for having how basic is that? That's my choice, either low pay or consistent hours. And I'm like,
it is one of those things like where you have a case of flexible schedules and low pay flexible schedules and non-consistent hours where you have to pay attention to your schedule every week in order to make sure that there are no changes, and even having to pay attention to the schedule daily to make sure that there are no changes means you're stuck at work.
Oh, and
you're stuck at work. You're stuck. Yeah. You don't have time for yourself. You don't know when you're going to have to come in, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you know what the schedule is, even though employers in this state have every right to change the schedule on a whim.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to bring up too. And this is something that I've thought about before too. Is people ask how come there aren't more? And granted, there's been tons of people coming out, especially since Trump's inauguration, to get engaged in community activism, community organizing. But imagine how difficult that would be, because this kind of different, because I've either worked a job with shifting schedules or kind of an abnormal schedule that mostly has me working afternoon shifts. How would I be able to do half of the stuff that I do organizing in the community if I had that kind of shift flexibility that is imposed on people, or if I were working a ton of afternoons or something? So that's also used as kind of a willful thing to disrupt people's lives, so that it's harder to build a union or harder to build class consciousness if your schedule is irregular and you can't meet people in those organizing spaces.
Yeah, it's actually if your schedule is constantly shifting, you don't have the time to put effort into other things. Really,
right?
Is what it is. And on top of that, it also essentially forces people to take unpaid time off to make doctor's appointments, to make appointments for health, to make appointments for things that are necessary to keep personal welfare up. So it's no one should have to take an unpaid day for whatever reason to go get a checkup. That shouldn't be a thing.
Yep, that's true. So I did want to point at a couple of these specific folks, just to, and granted, a lot of these people, I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a lot more research on, but there are a few positive things that are good omens. So the education stakeholder Von Washington Jr., who he's been a big name in education around here since I was going to high school. I don't know if Luke, if you remember him at all, but he was deeply invested in a lot of the arts programs that we had in our education system, trying to make sure that education was properly what's the word I'm looking for? Dispensed, particularly low income and African American community. Also, I want to mention, neighborhood stakeholders. Two of those stakeholders are from low income neighborhoods. So there's three neighborhood stakeholders, and there's Barbara Mueller from the Oakland Winchell neighborhood. But the other two, we've got Alice Taylor from the North Side, and then Sandra Calderon from Edison. So, that's good. That I remember saying several meetings ago, like there needs to be representation from low income, working class neighborhoods. You got that. And the other one I just wanted to bring up, and you'll be interested in hearing this one. The housing director is none other than Jovan Head. Yeah. We went to high school with him. So anyway, I'm going to try to get some of these folks on the show. I could probably get Jovan on the show to talk about his role as a housing director, and he can tell us how the cookie crumbles on that one. So good things going on locally, and I'll probably be giving a more detailed report on the show about that in the next couple weeks after I've actually done some time to research all these stakeholders. But at the very least, we can say it's not full of it's not just full of a bunch of like white elite professionals or like billionaire lackeys or anything horrendous like that. So yeah,
that's really when we would have gotten really up in arms.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, all right, let's take a little break and we'll get back into the discussion. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Alvan Humane Society is a non-for-profit, no-kill animal shelter that has been serving Allegan, Van Buren, and surrounding areas for almost 50 years. They are hosting their CARES Fund Drive and are over halfway to their $500,000 goal. Alvan can currently house around 30 dogs and 100 cats. Money raised from the CARES campaign will go to build a new shelter, which will expand this capacity by 20%. Alvan Humane Society has 20 dogs and 40 cats that are microchipped, spayed and neutered, and fully vaccinated, ready for adoption right now. To adopt a pet, donate to the CARES Fund Drive, or find out more, feel free to visit them on the web at www.al-van.org.
Wider FM is supported in part by local Kalamazoo and Greater West Michigan businesses like yours. If you are interested in getting your business's name on the air while supporting Radio Evolution, please visit widerfm.org for underwriting packages and other support options.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Man, Luke, that is rightfully ominous.
I'm really good at D&D music.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll have to remember next time. Like we have a really bad news week. Just,
I mean, it's the Spotify playlist.
Yeah, the horror. Oh,
busted out during Halloween too. It's great.
Yeah, actually, my brother did ask if I was going to do any like, are you going to do any Christmas themed stuff on your show? It's a political talk show. I don't know.
Christmas is pretty apolitical.
Yeah,
and getting wrapped up in the whole war on Christmas is really useless when you take a look at who's actually angry about it and who doesn't really care.
Yeah,
the majority of us don't really care.
Nope. Happy holidays is something you say just because. I don't know. Like, I think that, we were talking about political correctness earlier in the show.
We were.
I think people, there's a lot of like butthurt white people who don't get the difference between like, we're not trying to inhibit your speech. We're just saying like, if you say this particular thing, you'll sound like an a-hole. So maybe you'd say something else, or just try not to.
It's one of those things. It's like, hey, if you don't know, maybe you should default to Happy Holidays. It's not that hard. It's really, really not. People will tell you, oh, I celebrate this, or oh, I celebrate that, or oh, Happy Holidays to you too. Because at the same time, it's not just Christmas, guys. Like New Year's is just a week away, and I grew up like combining those two into Happy Holidays. Happy Holidays meant Christmas and New Year's.
Yep.
And as I have matured as a person and as an adult, it sort of makes sense that no, you could totally lump Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and Yule.
We should start placing bets on whether all actually will be quiet on New Year's Day. This is the first New Year's Day with President Trump. So
I don't know. I'm ready to
horrible.
I'm honestly ready to leave work early on Friday.
Yeah.
In the case that he fires Mueller on the 22nd.
Oh, that's right. I've been hearing stuff about this. One of my fellow organizers actually said, like, "Hey guys, we need to organize around this." And so yeah, I've heard scuttlebutt about this.
I have also I've shared some of the scuttlebutt on it. And like it's one of those. The administration is going to do something really, really terrible around just before a major holiday in order to try to blunt the news of the terrible thing that they just did.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? Just before Thanksgiving was the decision to repeal net neutrality.
Yeah,
it's like
right
we're gonna vote on it like in a couple weeks, but by the way, we're probably gonna get rid of net neutrality. That happened like right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So Christmas is one of those times where people aren't really paying attention to the news. They're not really paying attention to the world around them. They're busy trying to focus on stuff that is important to them: family, friends, quality time with the people they care about, which is not bad at all. 100%, it's awesome. But you use that time when people have their attention focused elsewhere to do something that is worse than what Nixon did.
Oh yeah, and let's reel back too, because I know like me and Luke have been vocal critics of Russiagate. Although a lot of stuff coming out in the Mueller investigation is important and not necessarily specifically related to a lot of the Russia collusion allegations. But the most important aspect to it really is just what an overt perversion and what's the word? I feel something of power.
Yeah, I feel like
abuse of power.
Yeah, I feel like I need to be a little clear on the Russiagate situation. Is like personally, I do not think that it is completely uncredible that there was foreign influence in our elections. It's 100% worth looking into if you actually give any craps about democratic integrity.
Yeah, and I'd say Trump's got connections to Russian oligarchs.
Yeah, there's 100% there's 100% a reason to investigate financial ties to foreign agencies. 100%. Like the dude was breaking the Constitution on the day he was sworn in. So there's been almost 365 days to impeach this guy. Every single day. Every single day is another reason to impeach this guy. So it's not that I don't think that Russiagate is not credible and that we shouldn't pay attention to it. It's that it shouldn't be the only thing we're focusing on, because in its ultimacy, it's something like foreign influence is something we can protect against. The Mueller investigation has led to other things, 100%, about the administration that are actual meat and bones, constitutional crisis issues.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly has.
That is necessary, but you can't just deflect to Russia, and you can't just say, well, I'm not Trump, and you can't just say, I'm not a Republican, I don't support, or I'm not the party of accused sexual predators. You can't, if you want to win politically, you have to promise people things and then deliver on them. You can't just say we're the party of not that.
Party of not that, and they keep revving people up for a smoking gun that never.
It's like we're the party of not we're the party of not that, and Russia. Please don't look at what we're doing. Russia. Please don't look at our policies. Russia. Please don't look at the fact that Chuck Schumer supported the tax bill.
There's this great article by, I believe it was FAIR, which is like a media watchdog organization, and it does a really good analysis of like why corporations like Comcast and like MSNBC spend so much time focusing on Russia, and they say it's because like you have and like this is actually some stuff I didn't personally know about. But MSNBC, at first, they were trying to be a little bit more conservative, but it wasn't polling well with their audience, so they started having more outwardly left people like Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow.
I remember when MSNBC was like touting we're hiring more conservatives.
Yeah,
I remember that. I'm just like, MSNBC, why would you do that?
Yeah, but what it allows them to do this by focusing on Russia so much is that policy-wise, a lot of things that Republicans are doing, the actual executives and people who run Comcast, they actually agree with. So it kind of allows them to have their cake and eat it too.
Well, it's exactly like how Donald Trump, everybody was afraid of Donald Trump during the campaign. Like the establishment was shaking in its boots about Donald Trump because Donald Trump was saying things like, I'll bring back jobs to America. I'll kick out anybody. I'll kick out the corruption in Washington. I'll drain the swamp. I'll make America great again. Like his right-wing populist rhetoric scared people in the establishment because it was inherently anti-establishment, anti-status quo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the same reason why they were afraid of Bernie, but Trump is a showman and Bernie is not. So Trump wound up getting, plus other factors like the Pied Piper strategy enacted by the Democratic National Party.
Yeah. The fact that he was already a reality TV star.
Yeah.
And so left-wing said
on top of all those factors, but the establishment was still like actually afraid of his policy rhetoric while he was on the campaign trail because they felt that it was going to threaten. It was going to threaten the status quo. It was going to threaten their profits. It was going to establish their established base of power. As soon as he got sworn in and actually started, doing things as a president, all of a sudden, people like Lindsey Graham, who was vehemently against Donald Trump on the campaign trail. Lindsey Graham's okay with Donald Trump now.
Oh yeah,
Donald Trump plays ball.
No, literally, like
Donald Trump plays ball with the establishment. Yeah. He doesn't. He's not kicking anybody out. He plays ball. He does their bidding. He does exactly what they want him to do because it benefits him. He can get rich off of this too. So why wouldn't he?
Oh yeah, and it's like we talk a lot. The whole like Trump people who voted for Trump thing, and it's the biggest like.
Feel bad for him, man.
Yeah, feel bad because it's like how desperate do you have to be to? Because he's like the most transparent con man who's ever run for office. Like Barack Obama broke a lot of promises when he got sworn in, and you can tell from apparently was it Citibank had a hand in picking his cabinet.
Oh yeah,
but
100%.
He did a much better job of kind of obfuscating, and
he was way better with the bread and circuses than this administration.
Oh yeah, and
it's really what it is.
Yeah, and Trump, there's this great Fight for 15 activist who's like a former coal miner. I played his clip on the show a few months ago. He's great, but he's a southern rural activist. And he said, before this election, nobody, people like me, people who come from like my town, we would consider Donald Trump like an unimpressive like Yankee Doodle, or something like that. And basically said a lot of folks, they don't necessarily trust him, but when you're that desperate, said maybe it'll be the change we need. So,
it's one of those things where. I completely believe people voting for Trump when he's running on anti-establishment rhetoric. When Obama, one of the reasons why Obama won in a landslide in 2008 was the message of hope and change. It's like, I'm Barack Obama. I'm going to bring change to Washington. I'm going to improve Washington. I am change.
The last three presidents have been essentially like a referendum, a desire for change, and even Bill Clinton. I don't necessarily lump him in with that, but his whole thing was like adopting kind of corporate economics into the Democratic Party, which I guess that was also kind of a change from like the Reagan-Bush orthodoxy. But yeah, like the last three presidents have explicitly run on change platforms from wherever the status quo started. So like, you got to understand that when you're really trying to understand the Trump phenomenon. Okay, we kind of ran away from it, though. We were talking about the Mueller investigation.
Yeah. What about it?
So there's a possibility that Trump might try to fire him on Friday. And people are talking about taking to the streets.
So because of that, there is a push to do immediate direct action, depending on when that might come through. If it's before noon, I believe there are protests scheduled. There is actually one organized at Bronson Park.
Yeah,
check the website. There is one being organized at Bronson Park, day of. If Mueller is fired before noon, there's supposed to be a demonstration at Bronson Park at 2. If it happens, I believe, if he ends up firing Mueller like after 3 p.m. or something like that, there will be next day action.
It's weird to me is I know Trump's dumb as a bag. I'd say dumb as a bag of hair, but maybe a bag with a toupee in it. But I mean, like, firing Mueller, like he's already got some prospective obstruction of justice charges.
No, look, he's pretty much admitted that he fired James Comey because James Comey wouldn't stop the investigation, which is obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
Like, he's already done it. He's already done it.
That's one of the frustrating things about both the Democrats and the Republicans. It's like the Democrats won't pull the trigger really wholeheartedly on impeachment stuff. I mean, they're starting to vocalize it more lately. But
they put motions forward in the House.
Yeah.
But they know it's not going to get any support because Republicans are being hardliners and they control the House.
It's like he's the most impeachable president that has ever sat in office. And all for reasons that, like, it's like, Russiagate aside, this guy's been racking up impeachment offenses from day one.
He attends his own golf course.
Probably broke if there were like a counter, like he attends a click counter, it'd probably be broken.
He never fully divested himself from his own businesses. He attends his own golf courses on vacations, which means his Secret Service retinue has to pay for rooms. The Secret Service has to pay for those rooms. They have to pay for the golf carts to follow his fat chunky butt around while he plays golf. Like, I believe the last time I looked, the tally for government expenses for golf carts alone has been over $1 million.
Talking about government waste.
Like, I'm sorry. Republicans don't get to call themselves the party of fiscal conservatism and fiscal responsibility ever anymore. They just don't get to. They don't get to claim that. Just like they don't get to claim that they're the party of family values. They don't get to claim that they are the party of the everyman. They don't get to say these things because they are fundamental lies. Because they do the exact opposite of what they say they do.
Yes.
At one time in history, conservatives were actually good for people. At one time in history, in America's history, the Conservative Party was a good thing for American politics because it ran a check on feasible progress instead of just going wildly out of left field
Yeah.
Let's do these things because they sound cool. Conservatives were there to be all like, whoa, wait. We have a lot of stuff we need to take care of.
Reminds me of a great Chris Hedges quote where he says, the genius of Bill Clinton is that he turned the Democrats into Republicans and drove the Republican Party so far right that it went insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have a left party. We don't have a progressive party. We don't have progressive voices in government. We don't have young voices in government, partially because there's literally no way to unseat these people who have so much money behind them. I want to leave off on kind of like a goof. Well, first of all, have you seen the new Star Wars yet? Absolutely, I have.
Oh, okay. And I don't know if I'm going to be saying any spoilers, but Mueller gets fired on Friday. You can take the streets. There will be opportunities here in Kalamazoo. I also think that'd be such a doofus move that, it would really be Trump shooting himself in the foot. But
it would be one of those things where, to be perfectly honest, if Trump fires Mueller and Congress does not do something about that, either rehiring Mueller as their own special investigator and just letting him continue, which is the common sense thing. If the House and the Senate do nothing to address that at all, recall your representatives. Recall them.
Yeah.
Recall them and put someone else in the chair who will do that, because that is what it's going to take.
Yep.
It's what it's going to take. At that point, it's I don't want to call it treasonous, but irresponsible to the grandest order of our democracy.
Oh, yeah.
To not address an obvious obstruction of justice to someone who at this point in time, as to what the public knows, has credible allegations against him in terms of what is being investigated.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm sorry, Mike Flynn wouldn't flip on the Trump administration if the FBI didn't already have didn't already have him by the short hairs. There is something credible there's credibility to this investigation, and it needs to be concluded. Now, whatever the results of the conclusion of that may be, it is something that needs to be concluded. But if he fires Robert Mueller and Congress does nothing, and the House doesn't, the Senate does nothing, the House does nothing, nobody does anything, because the Republicans are so dead set on supporting the dude who is allowing them to rob the American people blind. Recall your representatives, recall your senators, recall, if your state government, and at that point, the state government might get in the way, recall your state. Recall everybody. Just wipe the slate clean, put new people in.
Yeah.
Do not take no for an answer on this, because it is an attack on the fundamental functioning of our federal government, which is the thing that ties us as a union together.
That's right. So we got about 5 minutes left. So actually, it'd be kind of funny. So I saw the new Star Wars last night, and I bring this up because I had a very I got a very unique kind of political hot take from it. In the sense, I read this review that referred to it as the most populist Star Wars gift. And without getting into, because I don't want this to unspool the long.
We're in the last 4 minutes. This is your official spoiler warning.
Oh yeah, spoiler warning.
No, this is your official spoiler warning, listeners. If you don't want Star Wars spoiled to you, turn your radio off.
Yeah,
change your channel.
So when we found out that Snoke was Jar Jar Binks, what I was actually going to say is one. So Luke was a very interesting character in this movie, because not only did they not just make him Yoda, which is a lot of people worried it'd just be Empire Strikes Back, but there's that goofy meme I posted about how he's basically this old crotchety anarcho-Marxist professor
Ex-professor.
But that was actually, it was very interesting about how like it critiqued itself as kind of it was a very meta type of film, and he talks about like kind of the Jedi being this kind of elite, almost aristocratic group that always knows exactly what it's doing. And then they had the whole sequence where there's this what's the character's name who's like the mechanic, but she they visit this casino planet. And there's actually a line in there that says, like, these are the worst people in the galaxy. Is it the Sith? Is it the First Order? No, it's a bunch of capitalists who sell weapons.
Like, the movie even goes, like, number one, props to Benicio del Toro. Mm-hmm. God, I love that. I loved his character.
Oh, yeah. There's that whole bit, too, where, like, he talks about, like, it really kind of fractures, because it's, like, a very, like, black and white, good versus evil thing, and then there's that bit where he says, it's like, oh, who made the Empire's weapons?
This guy has this ship. He's so rich. He's been selling weapons to the bad guys. He flips through some holograms of TIE fighters and TIE bombers, but the good guys too. And it brings up a list of sales of X-wings, and it's just like, man, like. It's just one of those things. I will always go back to the Ferengi rules of acquisition. War is good for business.
War is good. The
rule right after that is peace is good for business.
Yep. Yep.
If you want any, like, the representation of a pure capitalistic society that actually manages to function somehow, look to the Ferengi.
Yeah. And there's also a part where, like, and I think this is really interesting. Spoiler. But after, so we got Kylo Ren and Rey, and Rey is ostensibly the light side of the Force, and he's the dark side.
That is sort of what it is set up to be.
And he basically says, like, screw the Sith, screw the Empire, just let's put all of this stuff in the dustbin, start something new. And she's kind of on that too, and that's kind of what she's learned from Luke. Luke is like, the Force is everywhere. Don't rely on a bunch of Jedi dogma.
Come with me and we'll rule together. Yeah. And she's just sort of like, whoa, dude.
Yeah.
Rule? I don't know about that.
But you know what? It's like I was thinking that moment as I watched it. It's like this is exactly what's going on now, because like both Rey and Kylo are like, we need a revolution. We need something new. We need, and Kylo's basically, he's an alt Jedi. He's like, you know what we need to bury all this stuff in the past? Authoritarian fascism. And Rey was like, I was gonna go with populist socialism, but okay, I guess I'm gonna have to kill you with a lightsaber now. But
yeah. That was your spoiler warning. I really apologize to anybody who
Kylo doesn't actually die. Let me make that clear.
But anyway, like, they were really minor spoilers.
So the next film is going to open with Kylo and Rey on a debate stage, and Rey's going to have like some glasses and a tie on, and she's going to have a Brooklyn accent.
I hope not.
It's like, you can't keep
episode 9.
99% of the galaxy the Force needs to be with them, not just with the 1%. Okay, that's
opening scene, episode 9. The Galactic Senate.
It's been reformed, but it's in gridlock. Okay. All right. Okay, well, it's about 7 o'clock, so probably wrap this up. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Festivus for the rest of us. And enjoy your holidays. And we'll be back next week with I think that'll be our end of year show.
It will be our end of year show.
Yep,
as it will be the end of the year.
Yep. Highlights from 2017. We made it. All right.
Barely.
Okay, so we'll see y'all later on. You've been listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Keep fighting for that revolution solution.